Welcome back. Despite President Obama's initiative to make America a global leader in education, statistics show that our schools are still struggling. Can we do anything about it? Are there any real solutions available? Joining me here at the Eagle Academy for Young Men to discuss this key issue are David Banks, President and CEO of the Eagle Academy Foundation, Missy Belmir, member of the Trenton, New Jersey School Board, and Arlaroo Lewis, Assistant Professor of Sociology and Black Studies at City College of New York. I just spoke to Secretary of Education Arne Duncan, and he laid out a range of initiatives that the Obama administration has taken up for education. What do you all make of what the Obama administration has done so far?
Frankly, I'm disappointed. When Barack Obama was campaigning, he stressed that No Child Left Behind was a broken policy. And the one thing he did talk about was a lack of funding. So they've proposed two changes to education right now. First, they recently approved waivers. Originally, No Child Left Behind, all schools were supposed to have students who were proficient in 2014, no achievement gap. And in reality, it's 2011, and we're far from lacking an achievement gap. So in response, the Obama administration has said, we'll just pretend that part of the law doesn't exist. The second thing that the Obama administration has done is has created the Race to the Top program. And they've suggested that in order for states and schools to receive additional funding in education, they have to enter a grant competition. So all 50 states have an equal chance of getting additional educational supports. Unfortunately, both Barack Obama and Arne Duncan say education is a civil rights issue of this generation. If it's a civil rights issue, why are they creating competition for resources that are essential for all of our children?
David, that's interesting because that sounds like a free market solution, right? I mean, do free market solutions work for education?
Very often they don't. I mean, even when we had the discussion, we're talking about charter schools and this notion that that bringing in charter schools would enhance the level of competition. The reality is that oftentimes we find that our public schools don't rise to that level of competition, feel like they don't have the resources that they need, that charter schools have additional resources, and thus they cannot compete. And so unlike in other businesses, where competition may require one group to win and another group to fail, we can't afford that in education. We need all of our young people to do well. And so I think that this free market competition doesn't always work, and we see that on the ground.
Speaking of being on the ground, Missy, you work for a school board in a major American urban city. Have you seen the Obama initiatives trickle down to the ground? Have you seen positive effects of what's going on so far?
No, we have not. I think one of the things we experience when you're in the district is the politics between the state and the federal government and how that may ultimately impact your ability to access funds. I think what we're pleased to hear is that there's going to be some investment in the modernization of buildings, because for the city of Trenton, that's a major issue. You can't say to children that this is very important, education should be something you're proud of, and then they walk into a building that's falling apart around them. So it's great that there's going to be funding. Hopefully,
so the Obama administration is going to put money into making buildings
part of what they've announced recently is that they're going to be putting funds towards that. The goal, hopefully, is that we will actually see those dollars.
You know, there's this sense also through the policy that the rising tide will lift all boats, and the reality, and particularly the work that I do here at the Eagle Academy and across the country, we see the state of black boys, is that, the rising tide does not lift the boat that has cement in it, right? And so the reality we face is that they're going to there needs to be some real affirmative kinds of things that have to happen for black males in order for their boat to rise. Otherwise, the rising tide just swamps the boat, and that's what we continue to see.
Lura, how do you raise young black men's boats? What do you do?
I think what's important is that the resources actually get to the places that they need to be. As Missy has suggested, the politics often keep things at levels where teachers, principals, building administrators don't get them, so they can't bring the necessary resources. We also have to make sure that young black men are in places that are culturally affirming, places where they know that there are other black men concentrating on school achievement and they can be who they are. Unfortunately, many of our schools treat black boys almost as if it's fast food service. You come in, you get served, go out. And if we look at the national rates, we're seeing graduation rates. About 47% of black males graduate high school on time in the United States in 2010. That is criminal.
What's going on with our boys? Why are they dropping out at such a high rate?
Schools, they don't see schools as a place that love them, that really deeply care about them and are otherwise preparing them. And that feeling, that disconnection starts very, very early, second, third, fourth grades, where you've got, a young man can go to school from kindergarten all the way through high school and never even have a black male teacher. That impacts very adversely, a young man when he doesn't see himself in the classroom.
Well, one of the things Arne Duncan spoke to me about was this idea of training teachers differently, of not just throwing teacher certification at them, not just throwing credentials at them, but really preparing them to be on the ground in real-life inner-city schools. It sounds like you all are saying that it's not just about teaching them how to teach math or how to teach reading, but also preparing teachers for the cultural issues that black folk have uniquely sort of wrestled with in America, right?
I absolutely agree. I think a good teacher is one who can deliver content but can control a classroom. Oftentimes, classroom management is out of control for folks who really have the best of intentions. And if you can't control your classroom, you can't teach your kids. If you can't care for your kids, you can't teach your kids. We have to get teachers trained in ways to identify what are the needs of their students and how to deliver the material to them.
This idea of control is really important. One of the things that people have suggested is that people should control their own schools at the administrative level, at the classroom level, at every level, in fact. And one of the ways that people talk about controlling schools is through the charter school movement. When we come back, I want to talk to you all a little bit about charter schools and whether or not they're a real solution at all. Stay right there. We'll be right back.
When you just show up and get off the sidelines and get into the game, show up at the school where they know who you are, it makes all the difference in the world.
Here with David Banks, Missy Belmir, and LaRue Lewis. We're talking about schools, and we're talking about school reform now. Over the last 10 years, there has been a charter school explosion. In every city, in every state, people are talking about charter schools as a way of responding to broken education systems. What do you all say about them?
To me, the biggest thing that we've gotten out of charter schools is they have elevated the level of the conversation for us to really be focused on education.
Now for the benefit of our viewers, can you say what a charter school is?
Charter schools essentially are public schools, but they are privately managed.
So publicly funded.
Publicly funded.
Privately run.
And privately run, absolutely. And I think that those schools have had a level of autonomy around their curriculum, hiring and firing of teachers and staff that I think has made a great difference in terms of the work that they're actually doing.
Now, Missy, you're in Trenton. I remember maybe 10 years ago in Trenton, there was one major high school, Trenton Central High School, and then there was a charter school being birthed. And now there's more charter schools and one more high school, and it seems that people are saying that the charter school is the way to go as opposed to expanding the high school, the traditional high school.
I mean, interestingly enough, in the city of Trenton, we just watched a charter school, K-8, and a high school close because of lack of performance. So I think if you, again, have the same challenges that we've spoken of with regard to the students, the same issues with teachers, and again, I say the building leadership being key in terms of getting those teachers what they need in training, you will have the same result.
So then tell me, y'all, what do we do next? In light of these issues of responsibility, in light of these social conditions, what can we right now, today, do to repair our broken schools?
I think a big piece of it also starts with keeping the students first. Keeping their needs at the forefront of every decision that's made. You know, doing things like parent academies so that you can start to engage parents in a way that they may not have been previously. Really focused on students and not all the other policy and politics, which we really haven't engaged in, that really run rampant in terms of how we talk about education and how we keep students at the forefront of what we're doing.
To our world audience who's listening, you know, as they ask themselves that question, what can I do? I would tell them, as somebody who's been a principal for 11 years in New York and a teacher for many years in the system, when you just show up, and get off the sidelines and get into the game, show up at the school, volunteer, you know, just put some time in where they know who you are. It makes all the difference in the world. When that teacher or that principal of that school knows you and they know at any moment you could be around, you're showing up, the way that they respond to your child is totally different than somebody perhaps who they never see a parent, who dropped them off on the first day and they never see them for the next several years.
So, LaRue, what do you say? What do we do next?
I think I agree with Sister Belmir and Brother Banks. We have to get parents involved. You have to get off the sidelines and get in the game. But you can't just advocate for your child alone. If it takes a village to raise a child, you have to advocate and make sure that other families are also involved. You have to make sure maybe you're in that school that is successful in the neighborhood, but the other three are failing. You have to put pressure on politicians and other folks to make sure those other schools do well. Because if you don't, even if your child is doing well, he's going to school or he's friends with others who are not in good places. His choices for the potential to have lifelong partnerships change. The ability or run-ins with the police change. The reality is that you have to advocate for your child and other children at the same time, because it's going to take the village to make sure education changes.
Wow. Well, you all are giving us a lot to think about, and hopefully, even though we have a lot of work to do, the solutions you all offer will get us on the right path. David Banks, Missy Belmir, LaRue Lewis, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Stay right there. We'll be right back. That wraps it up for this edition of Our World with Black Enterprise. Be sure to visit us on the web at blackenterprise.com/ourworld. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at Marc Lamont Hill and friend me on Facebook. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.